finally up to the painting part. Yay! As much as I don't enjoy painting, it's gratifying to get this far. So I call it paint, but it's not paint. It's not considered a paint. It's just a rust encapsulator, a special process. It's not a primer. There's no primer first. There's a bare metal surface prep, and then hit it with this stuff. This stuff does not have a good UV rating, so if you were going to use it where it's exposed to the sun, you have to do something over top of it. Probably hit it with primer and paint. So I wouldn't use it anywhere. I wouldn't use it anywhere but underneath a vehicle that never sees the daylight. But it's a lot of guys like it, so I'm trying it. It's a very strange thing to work with too. It's not like paint. It looks thick in the pan, and then you start rolling it on, painting it on, and it runs like water. So it's really hard to work with. And you want to get it on as thin a layer as you possibly can. You don't want to slop it on there. So I'm really taking my time to chase runs. The good part of it running is it gets into all the nooks and crannies. But if you don't chase the runs, it kind of makes for an ugly job. And it also drips, and runs are thicker, so not as effective. They chip off easier. So I really try to take my time and work it. Start with stuff on the brush or on the roller and let it dry, or just keep reworking it so it was not flowing at all. The best way I can explain it. Also, I'm using a microfiber roller and a decent brush that isn't going to lose all its hair, but not an expensive brush because there's no use cleaning them. But what I'm getting at is don't use foam based brushes or rollers. All they're going to do is fall apart under these conditions and leave little chunky foam all over the place in your paint. It wouldn't last long, but this microfiber things are working really nice. I was actually surprised of how much of the painting I could do with the roller. You get into most of the places. Now, as I recall, it took me about 2 hours to do one pass on the first coat of paint. And then it says the recommendation is a 4-hour break before doing your second coat. So that's kind of what I did. Another thing you have to think about is how to go about painting it, which is another reason I'm doing it in sections, and how I'm doing the sections. So once you've got something painted, you might not be able to do the contortionist movements to get into another area that you've painted without painting yourself into the corner. So you got to paint yourself out of the corner so that you're not all covered in paint when you're done, that you can reach around and do stuff from a bunch of different angles without having to hold on to a painted surface or leaning on a painted surface. So it's good to break it up into sections like this. I managed to do this without having to hold on or rub against or lay against painted surfaces while working my way out. I'm also doing everything as much as possible from, like, I'll work an area over and over from different angles. So like stereo, coming at it from different ways, different angles, different brushes. So I'm trying to reduce the possibility of missing even any nook and cranny. You just want to get it everywhere, but you don't want it to be running and leaving puddles of stuff around. So by working it over and over in the same place again and again from different angles with just a minimal amount of product on the brushes, you get better results in the end. The thinner the layer, the better. A thin layer of paint is hard to chip off. Thick paint chips off easy. All of these cross members and boxes that I'm doing are the most challenging by far. Spray paint would have been nice, but this stuff, there's advantages, disadvantages. This stuff, there's no instructions for using a spray gun of any kind. I think it's only ever meant to be brushed on. But if I was using, let's say, paint cans in this, well, if I was using a regular primer and paint, where I did primer first and then paint, I could have used aerosol cans as well to get at the tight areas that I couldn't get at with the brush. But I did manage to get everything, I think. I don't think I missed anything. You can see how that stuff runs in this shot here. There's not a lot of material product on my roller. It's just the minute it hits the metal, it just like runs. It's like a chemical reaction almost. Which is good because it's trying to get into the pores of the metal. And this is a good view of how I go over everything 3 or 4 times from different perspectives, angles. Most of these videos I'm doing right now are at 4 times speed. Like I say, I had 24 hours of video that I broke down into a total of 1 hour. Here's a good shot where you can actually see how well you can get into places with a roller. I think the brush I'm using is a 2-inch brush. It was too big for this application. But it's my first pass, so I'm not too worried about it. I'll use a smaller brush on the second pass. You can see it's just taking a beating. Trying to jam it in every little bolt hole, every little nook and cranny. Lighting is a big deal. Mostly because I have bad eyes now that I'm so old. But you can't really tell without extra light. You need really good lighting. The reflection of the fresh paint, you don't know if it's rusty sometimes, or if you missed a spot, it's really hard to tell. You got to have a lot of light to do a good job. That's pretty much rounding up the first pass of paint. Final inspection. So here we are on the second coat of paint. 4 hours later. Got my headlamp on so it's easier to see. The second coat is really a pain in the butt. You cannot tell if it's been the second coat or if you're on the first coat. It's really hard to tell. So I'm even more meticulous in stereo coverage here, more angles. Triple, quadruple pass in the same places. I've switched over to the 1-inch brush so it's easier to get into all the nooks and crannies. Also, I have a fresh roller. It's no point in trying to clean and save your rollers and your brushes. As soon as you're done, throw your brush out, get a new one. And same with the roller, peel it off, throw it away, clean the roller handle, the roller holder. So it's good for make it last, but it's the actual application. The microfiber rollers, just throw them out. No point trying to clean them. Also, they take a beating in this environment, all in this rough steel, so they're never the same after a couple hours of painting. I spent more time on the second coat than I did on the first, that's for sure. And it's also harder to do the second coat because now you don't want to touch what you've already painted with your hands or your body or lean against stuff. It's a little more difficult to get around and not smudge the paint you've already installed, applied. The one thing about the second coat, you can see more clearly if you've missed stuff. And I was surprised that I actually did probably got 99% of the coverage on the first pass. There was a couple of spots where I saw rust, missed bolts, nooks and crannies where you could see rust deep inside, and managed to find them all on the second pass. So the best thing you can do is seal. Think of it, you're not so much painting as sealing everything. You want to keep humidity from getting inside and behind stuff. It's probably a better way to look at it. Yeah, it makes everything look good, and it's nice to do a nice paint job to make it look good, but really the objective is to seal the steel from the environment. So this second pass probably took me 2.5 hours, 3 hours. This is August 2022. And I kept up on this till end of September 2022. I've just picked away on it on days off, weekends. Basically, I would average being able to do about 16 hours a week of work on the truck in 2022. From July to October. A whole bunch of other stuff happened that I couldn't work on it the other times. But there's videos on that. And look in the top right hand corner, you can see how much dust I created and how much dirt has accumulated on the frame that I've already painted. Once I'd completed painting the whole frame up to the radiator, from the radiator back, I ended up washing the whole undercarriage down again twice with spray 9 to get it clean again. And that was last September. It's dusty now in 2023. In April, now is April 2023. It's dusty just because I'm outside in the elements, in gravel, in the weather. So before I seal up the basement, I'll probably have to go through and meticulously clean everything again one more time once I have all my tanks and mechanical systems installed. But that's a few days down the road before all of that happens, at least. And that just about wraps up the second coat, and it's looking pretty good. And like I say, this is only 1/8 of the whole job of repainting the frame. Not to mention I got to put it all back together.